let's do our introduction. For those who haven't been part of Project Synapse before, welcome. Project Synapse is, of course, John Penard. How you doing, John? This is
good. How are you?
And Marcel Gagné. Welcome, Marcel.
Good morning. Lovely to see you all.
And every week we get together to try and sort out this thing that is artificial intelligence. And we've been doing this for weeks and weeks now. We're no closer to the truth. But I think we've been trying to at least work our way through some of the issues and for ourselves even cut through the hype, discuss, and even sometimes, dare I say, argue so that we can actually get to the clarity of a point. Argue in the sense of not that thing that happens on social media where you're a poo head or something. But we actually present, argue. I have a point of view with some proof. You have a point of view with some proof. Let's compare those. I know that's novel, but it actually still can work. Go figure. One of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about this week, because I think it's getting harder and harder week after week, announcement after announcement. Somebody comes up and says, I got Grok 3 and it fits all of these it measures up on all of these different places. I've got Gemini and it measures up here and mine's superior. Keeping all of this straight for the average person has to be absolutely a nightmare. I looked at all of the things where people were presenting all of the various
benchmarks.
Thank you. It's tough being
that's why I'm here.
Yeah. But you take a look at all of these different benchmarks, and when they brought out Grok 3, I was watching either YouTube or checking out something, I can't remember, but the benchmarks went on and on for 2.5 pages. And even with that, they left out some of the unfavorable ones. How do you do that? I think we can reasonably agree that benchmarks are probably not the way for the average person to understand the differences in these AI models.
I would agree 100%.
Yeah, and so would I. I think at the end of the day, when you talk about benchmarks, you're talking about speed and things like that. None of these tools are slow. One might take 5 seconds versus 4 seconds, but I don't think any of them are at a point where it's slow enough that it's not worth using. But I think a lot of it comes down to what works best for you. And I'm in a Microsoft environment at work. And so for us, although I don't necessarily agree that Copilot is the best tool, for us, it will be the best tool because it works with all of our Microsoft products. If you're a Google shop, then Gemini is the best one, most likely for you. There are certain things that Claude does better than the other tools do. There's certain things that Grok does that are better. And so I think it really is going to boil down to features and functionalities that best suit what you're looking for to tie into. And I know certain people whose initials are MG may have subscriptions to all of them. But yes, Marcel, I was talking about you. But I don't think,
I
think it's going to get down to the point where people may have a subscription to one or maybe two. And that'll be the tools of choice for that.
People who have multiple subscriptions at the moment are people who are enthusiasts, who are following the industry and all of the new cool things that are coming out every other day. Because let's face it, we're at a point where we joked at Christmas time with the whole Shipmas thing, the 12 days of Shipmas. It's every day there's something new. But you know what? Every day there's something new. It's just nonstop. And if we were to just sit down and list the things that have happened in the last week alone, that would be the entire show, just talking about some of the things that have shown up or that have been discussed and talked about. So it really is hard to keep up. But as John was suggesting, the frontier models, and by frontier models, I'm talking about the big bad systems that are out there that are the bleeding edge things. And that includes, yes, Anthropic and OpenAI and Microsoft's Copilot, which of course is OpenAI. And if you take a look at the big models, they're all really close. There are things that one excels at over the other. But even there, it's hard to pin that down because if you take a look at OpenAI, for instance, we've got GPT-4o, we've got GPT-4o with tasks. We've got GPT-3 Mini High versus GPT-3 Mini versus the GPT-3 reasoning model.
God, spare me from this.
But that's what makes it incredibly hard. And that's what makes it hard to pin down all these benchmarks. Does OpenAI have the best model? That depends. Which model from OpenAI are you talking about?
Right.
I cannot believe what OpenAI has done. Is there not a marketing person in that entire organization?
They're going to fix that.
Oh God, I hope so, because they didn't even give them distinctive names. Chat GPT 01 Harbergaduga. Like, it's just meaningless after that point. And keeping track of them. I can barely keep track of the word benchmarks. I'm supposed to keep track of 5 different models and know which one to pick to do the task. So I think they finally have realized this, but I cannot believe that they would do that. But even when you're looking at the different models that are out there now, you've got, I think, Claude came up with 3.7. What's 3.5 versus 3.7 versus 3.3? You used to have software you would move to, and then you'd get rid of the past version.
And remember, too, it got weirder than that because we had Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and then instead of giving us Claude 3.6, did I just say Claude? I can't believe I said that.
I can't believe you said that either.
I know. It's because I've been hearing all these other people talking about it, and you hear the voices.
I refuse to put Claude. Anything that is a super intelligence cannot be named Claude.
All right. Anyway, Claude.
Thank you, Mr. Hopper.
Thank you. Instead of calling it Claude 3.6, they called it Claude 3.5 Preview 1206 or something incredible.
Sorting this out from the public point of view, and I agree with you, John, speed, I think you have to take off the table. I'm amazed at myself when I'm waiting there and it takes more than 4 seconds. You go, what's happening here? After a point, it doesn't matter. And I've even heard people say, this thing's painfully slow because I had to wait a minute for it to read the entire internet and come back. So speed is just nothing we can do about that, except I think if we were dealing with interactive applications, latency could be an issue.
Yes.
I would get
I was going to say, if you get into APIs and things like that, those types of things can make a difference because typically those are calls from interactive programs or whatever. So you need those to be as fast as you can. But for what we're talking about here, I don't think you can say any of them are too slow or one is remarkably fast compared to the others.
I just want to throw on top of Jim's comment from a minute ago. There was a time, I remember working retail like 40 plus years ago. And I remember back then that we used to take people's credit cards and we would go to the phone and call up the credit card company for a certain purchase. So if it was like over $100 or something like this, you would call them up to find out, to get an authorization code for that card. So buying a big purchase on a credit card could take 5-10 minutes while you're waiting on hold to get the authorization code. Now you're at the checkout today. And for whatever reason, Interac is a tiny bit slow when you're trying to make your payments. And you had to wait like a whole 5 seconds for the little icon to pop up on the pay terminal. And the person behind the desk or at the checkout says, I'm really sorry, things are really slow today. And I put myself back 40, 45 years and I think to myself, you have no idea.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Even with email, somebody will send you an email. It's not here yet. I don't know what's going on. It's still not here yet. Still not here yet.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
So
it took 12 seconds.
Yeah.
Versus having to send what we call snail mail now that used to take 3 weeks.
So let's take speed off the table. The characteristics of these things, I think, matter to some extent. For me, anyway, if I'm doing writing, and it actually depends on the type of writing I'm doing, I find that OpenAI, maybe and I don't mean to contribute to this because you actually had to keep it straight. If I'm using the O1 model, then it actually writes better, my impression of it. But again, this is going to be subjective.
Let's explain
Claude
that. O1 is being the reasoning model.
Yeah, the reasoning models, I think, are better. Sorry? You're going to say?
I said not necessarily. It depends on the O1 model that you're using.
It's true.
Yes, true.
But so you go through this and you say, I find the one I'm most comfortable with, but O1 doesn't have a direct link to the internet. So sometimes if I'm 4.0, you need. So you've got these little nuances between these things that you have to settle on. But then I found that Claude is really good for some types of writing, not other types of writing. And that's interesting. Gemini, I've always been afraid of because I just have this perception that there are more hallucinations still in Gemini. I've just seen more of them. And so that's my own felt experience. And then I'm playing more and more with DeepSeek, and it's quite good. I mean, it's solid for writing, and by writing reports or writing things that are where I really need it to improve. Because most of what I use in terms of writing, I'll write a long email, and I used to just read it, and then if I want to make sure I sound intelligent, I try and leave it behind, and then I go read it again, and then I might even read it a third time, and then I'll send it out and see the mistake that I made after I pushed send, and there's nothing I could do about it. So now, to save myself literally sometimes 10 minutes, I'll actually write an email, pop it into my favorite AI, generally Claude or OpenAI, and have it say, just reorganize this for me. And it cuts down on a lot of things, takes out all the cuteness, takes my little smiley faces out and things like that probably I should be more professional then, but I'm not. So it'll take out the nuances, but it actually does check things, and that's good.
But Jim, sorry, just to touch on that, your cuteness that you were talking about, Marcel, correct me if I'm wrong, but with OpenAI, you can actually specify, you can describe your persona, right? That says,
You can do that. Yes, no, you're right. And you can do that actually with all of them. And I've been doing this for quite a while. Ever since you were able to give custom instructions to OpenAI, I've been doing this. And what I have is I have this big 2 or 3 pages worth of stuff that says, this is who I am. I'm Marcel. This is how I write. This is how I talk. This is the way that I appreciate you responding to me. So no AI that I use on a regular basis will ever use the words, I am an AI model. Never happens, because I have this preloaded set of information on all of these things that say, I'm a casual guy. I expect you to talk to me in a casual way. Unless, of course, we're talking about research, in which point I've actually told you up front that this is what we're doing. Otherwise, I want you to respond in a way that sounds like me. So in fact, I'm looking for a mirror to myself. This is not an ego thing. This is I want the intelligence systems to be an enhancement of my own capabilities, as opposed to being an external thing that I bring in.
Now you're putting those in the main stored instructions, right? I've been using the project stored instructions because and this is my problem, is because I do this under different circumstances. I want different behaviors. So I've been using the projects in OpenAI, but I find it forgets. Like I will painfully tell it.
Yeah, it's under custom instructions. Yeah, if you actually take a look at your profile, you'll find that there's something down there under settings and all that stuff that actually says custom instructions. That's where I preload all that stuff.
I might try and I might change my style on that and try and preload some things into there. But still, when I'm writing something and I want it to check something, or I'm putting something together, a report is different than a short piece or a marketing piece. And I tell anybody, if you read anything that's marketing from me, you've read something written by AI. Why? Because it's a formula and it's just faster to use it. It's better than I am, and I'm pretty darn good. But at that sort of thing, getting it to differentiate. So I was trying to use projects for that to get the differentiate style, but I find out that it does forget. I'll be doing something, it'll do something 6 times really well. And then the 7th time I'll look at it and go, did you even read your instructions? And I actually ask it that. I get very terse with it. I upgrade it. It says, I'm sorry, Jim.
So what you have to do there is remember that depending on what it is that you're using, and Claude has had that problem for a while. They have a great context window for understanding, but if your chats get really long, it keeps everything in the chat as part of its context, and the context starts to get mixed up. So what you have to do is it's not so much dealing with it in terms of projects. It's more a question of open a new chat under that project. So you set up the project with whatever the parameters happen to be, how you want it to talk, what it is you want it to do for this particular set of instructions. And that's what's preloaded into the project. And I'm talking specifically Claude here. Although there is now the equivalent, obviously, in own thing as well. I'm trying to remember what it's called at the moment. I don't look at it over there. But it's the same thing. It's a project. What you have to do is preload the core information, the really important stuff, as part of the supporting documentation. And this is how I do it. It's not a prompt. I actually have a little document that has all of those things that I want, the way that it writes, the way that it responds, whether I want things terse or quiet or fun or whatever.
Yeah.
I have all of that stuff in at the beginning as a document that is attached to it. So every time I open a chat, it rereads that initial document.
That's essentially
Okay.
what I'm doing. I haven't loaded. I've been storing it as a document and reloading it just because I figured it can't. It's like chicken soup, can't wait. And it does improve things. These things do have memories, and they do get
Yep.
messed up. But that's, which sort of answers the question, just bringing this around, as to why you would think about having to keep track of more than one model. Because John, you pointed out, find something that works for you and just work with it. But I found that for different styles, it's better off using a different model. The second thing is because I am now dependent on AI. Like, I have organized my workflows in a number of things where if it's not working, I lose an hour. Like, I have told everybody, I'm running a small publishing company with 1.5 people, where I used to have 5 or 6 to do these podcasts every week. I used to have 5 or 6 people that would do that. We're now down to me and a half a person on tech support. If anything messes up, if the editing messes up, or the thing that does the graphics or anything like that messes up, I'm up at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning editing. Not my favorite thing. So I try to have a backup for everything that I'm doing, because sometimes we got this thing where OpenAI became stupid. We had that. It does become stupid. I don't know why. Some days it's just, is it hungover? What is it? I don't know, but it's just not very good. And you can upgrade it all you want. You can send it all these notes and say, did you read these instructions?
Well, the problem is that all of these companies right now are doing updates in the background constantly.
Yes.
So we used to think in terms of, okay, here's the new model, and the new model is stable. The new model where all of the information up until March 2023, and anything after that, obviously it doesn't know. But now the stuff is being updated all the time. Additional information is being fed into the model. The model is continuing to learn. Even as a base model, it is continuing to learn things. The model that you're playing with today is not the model you were playing with yesterday. Even if it looks like it has exactly the same name, they're changing all the stuff under the surface for you. If you think of the internet, just because you searched for something yesterday on the internet doesn't mean that it's the same information that comes up today, because the information out there has changed somewhere in the world since yesterday.
Yes.
We have to get used to that idea. We joke about the idea that Marcel has a subscription to like 6 or 7 different models, which is actually true. I do. And I also have a couple of subscriptions to places. Like I have a subscription to Poe.com, which lets me access a whole bunch of different large language models, a lot of different image generation stuff, video models, all that stuff. That has limitations because there's only so much crap that they can pass through their API and still keep the systems going. So sometimes you still want to go direct to the source as opposed to an aggregator like that. But in some ways, that is the future. And it's the future because, as we've already talked about, this model may be really good at coding. This model may be really good at instant factual digging up information. This one is really great at research. This one is really great at creative writing. Okay, so they've all got like their thing that shines, that sets them apart from all of the other ones. So we are going to, in the next 1.5 years, all have our own little personalized agents. And those little agents are going to talk to a whole bunch of other models through APIs, through whatever else. And you're probably going to wind up subscribing to one of the big ones, but all of the big ones are also going to pull in information from a variety of other vendors or a variety of other sources and so forth. I think that the age of the singular monolithic model from a singular company is actually going to come to an end. And that's because despite the fact that they're all getting better all the time, some still excel at certain things better than another.
And this week, I think Claude Anthropic made a move towards that. And I thought it was really smart. And that is, for years, I can't believe I'm talking about weeks and months. And it feels like
Yeah.
I'm saying for years, for the longest time, Claude has been regarded by people in the inside as the great coding machine. It has been a lot of people who were working with it have thought it was the greatest. Whether it was or not, or whether whatever, it doesn't really matter. But that was where they'd staked part of their reputation. And that was how they were keeping ahead of OpenAI. OpenAI has been blasting away, trying to catch up with it. Maybe they haven't. Certainly Grok has done some incredible stuff in coding. A model like Anthropic, can it be everything to everybody? And I think this last release, they even said, we're not pursuing some of the other things. We're going to stay where we are in creative writing and coding. And we're going to focus mostly on those. And we're not going to focus on those esoteric math problems that appear once in grade 11 math and never appear again. So you might see models that people really do think have exceeded in one way or another.
OpenAI is heading in that direction. Remember the announcement from just a week and a half ago? We're going to let the model decide for you what resources to use, right?
Yep.
As in, we're going to get rid of that model picker. That's exactly what they're saying. We're going to get rid of the model picker. And then we're going to analyze the question that you brought in, what it is you're looking for, and then we will feed it to the appropriate system on the back end. So you don't have to think about that anymore. It's already happening, at least in one place. And I think it's going to happen everywhere else.
But they're still trying to be everything for everybody.
I would, going back to Marcel's comment, his prediction, that I would agree with you totally, that I think it makes the most sense too, that there are so many tools out there. We've talked about half a dozen of the sort of the, I'll call it the key tools, but there's a whole bunch of other ones as well. And the end users aren't going to want to remember all of these different tools. It's like when the internet first started out. If you knew a URL to go to, you could get a lot of information. But if you didn't know it, until Google and others came out with search engines and created this so that now all you have to do is go into this search engine. It's going to get something similar to that from an AI standpoint, that you'll go into ABC and put in your request or the prompt that you want it to write a marketing material for you, and it'll figure out which is the best tool to go and use. Now, that might be whichever one pays it the most, but...
You are Apple fanboys, okay? So let me just point out...
For those listening on the audio podcast, you can't see my look of surprise.
And you know, that's the road that Apple is going down as well with their Apple Intelligence. We've got a limited amount of smarts on the device that does this and that for you. And if need be, then we'll go out into the internet and ask additional things. The big thing was the OpenAI stuff. It's if I don't know the answer, and Siri basically never knows the answer, but if I don't know the answer, I will go and ask OpenAI, and OpenAI's ChatGPT will come up and give you the answer.
Yep.
But at some point, that's got to be transparent because nobody wants to go through this. Is it okay if I go and search the internet for you?
And if you think about it, the average user doesn't care what tool you're using, right? They want to ask a question, they want to get a response back. And whether it's Apple Intelligence or whether it's whatever, OpenAI figuring out which model to use or whatever, go for it. Just give me an answer that I'm looking for.
Let me put on my Linux open source hat for a second here and point out that for years we have this running joke in the open source community. This is the year of the Linux desktop. You know what? The year of the Linux desktop has come and gone so many times now. That's what it is. It's a running joke. However, the internet runs on Linux. Every email server, every DNS server, every firewall system, your thermostats, your television, your car audio system, like all of this crap runs on Linux. Like, it is the singular most powerful and used operating system on the planet. And nobody knows that it's out there. And with all of these intelligences that we're building into things, we are building ubiquitous intelligence that's always there. You heard the announcement about Alexa this week, right?
Yeah.
Alexa is finally going to roll out. There's going to be Alexa Plus, which actually I'm looking forward to seeing, because I actually pay for a Prime membership. And it will be included in the Prime memberships. Hey, Marcel won't have to pay for another $20 a month subscription.
How much did Alexa cost? So and if I say her name, she's gonna start talking in this. But so I'm gonna. How much does that person we shall not name, because I've got both of them running here. Never mind him and her. But how much did we pay for these devices? And for them to be like, you know what I've gotten out of the big A word? Has been, I occasionally I can get a timer when I'm cooking.
Yep.
Yeah.
$89 for an egg timer. Thank you very much.
It will tell me that I've purchased something on Amazon that should be coming up, repurchase, and would I like it to add it to my order or to my...
There's a demo video that they put out. Alexa Plus hasn't been rolled out anywhere at the moment. Although I keep hearing about the idea that you can try it somewhere somehow. But it has not been rolled out. It's a coming soon thing. But the demo, if you go and take a look on YouTube, there's a demo where they have it do all sorts of things. And it is impressive as hell. It's everything that I want my GOOGLE speaker to be. It's everything that I want that to be, which it isn't at the moment.
Speaking about GOOGLE, sorry, I'm interrupting you. Why aren't they further ahead?
Exactly. Okay, let me beat up on Gemini at the moment. Gemini should be like the greatest damn thing in the universe because it's on every Android device, or it certainly is on my Pixel device. I have these devices all over my house. I have a smart camera. Actually, I have 3 or 4 smart cameras that are all hooked into that ecosystem. I have carbon dioxide, monoxide detectors that are Nest products that are tied in it. I live in this infrastructure of Google products, and it is not any smarter than it is at the moment. Every time I pull up Gemini to do research on something, I am disappointed.
Well,
and it's like that. I
they own search
every time I use it.
Yeah.
They serve search, but they can't seem to get that search. And Google is so risk averse, which is amazing given that they were a company that was on the edge of so many fascinating and interesting products. But they are so risk averse, so worried about upsetting someone, anyone today, that every time they do something, they have been so cautious tiptoeing around things that what they produce is a joke. And at the moment, try this one for me. People beat up on DeepSeek, for instance. It's what happened at Tiananmen Square. Ask Google Gemini on your phone or on your web browser or something like that, who is, and list a political leader somewhere in the world at the moment. Who is Donald Trump? Who is Justin Trudeau? Who is...
Sorry, Dave,
who is
I
Emmanuel
can't
Macron?
answer that.
Maybe you could do a Google search. I want to do a freaking Google search. You are Gemini. You are freaking Google. Do the search for me. And it's not that difficult. Justin Trudeau is the Prime Minister of Canada. It's not a hard thing to answer, and it's not politically charged. It's a fact. And it can't answer facts because it's worried. And it's like their Sora product. Let me continue beating up on Google just for a minute here because I'm on a freaking roll. Their product is, I can't generate images of people. What do you mean you can't generate images of people? Of real people? Well, because real people, there are real people all over the bloody place. And the odds are if you create somebody from scratch, it's going to look like somebody somewhere. Because there are only so many ways that you can put a face together without somebody saying, do you know that you look like that person over there or something like this? Like, there are just so many things they're worried about. And sometimes they've gone so far overboard. Remember that thing where it's giving me a picture of the founding fathers and they were all black?
Yeah.
I understand that you're trying to be diverse, but there are places where the reality wasn't diverse. And if you're just creating a new reality, you can't be trusted.
And it amazes me because, it amazes me that Google isn't further ahead because Google's got so much to gain that they're trying to corner the market, not only on AI and so on, but they've got their Google Workspace. And if you could look, I'm a Microsoft shop, and so we're using Copilot here. We're using Copilot because we're a Microsoft shop. If Google could get their act together and make these things all work well together, which they're trying to, but also like their AI, bring it up to snuff with the others, and with the fact that it works with Google Workspace included, they could corner the market.
They have finally, in some aspects, gotten their act together on, if you're using Gemini, it does now suggest to help you with emails. And if you're using Google Docs, it will make some suggestions. They've done the typical Google design, which just gets in the way. That's another story, but at least it's semi-integrated into there. But again, that's so late in the game. And even the stuff that they just knocked it out of the park with in terms of Notebook LM. like they had the perfect opportunity with those people that would do the podcast for you to actually do
Yes.
some of the things that I know I've seen Marcel do. But I meant you working with readily available tools, and they wouldn't even gussy it up to make it a little different and to put a little sparkle on it. They just seem paralyzed, and I don't know why.
Notebook
okay,
LM is
just-
one to me that as you said, I think that Notebook LM from what Marcel had shown us previously and things, there is an enormous amount of things that you can do with it. And the only time I've ever heard about Notebook LM is basically when the three of us talk, because it doesn't seem to get an awful lot of publicity elsewhere.
And you know where they've lost it too? On research. On scientific research, Google is knocking it out of the park, and nobody knows. For doing scientific papers, and people are really using it to actually enable discoveries. And again, nothing translating to the general public on that.
I was going to point out that a lot of these tools are actually rolled into the Google Workspace product, John, and they're not bad. For instance, I'm looking at a document that Gemini are working on at the moment, and because I have Google Workspace, there is that little blue icon up in the top right-hand corner that says Ask Gemini. This is the paid-for version Google Workspace. Yes, I pay for Google Workspace as well. If you click the button, it opens up the Gemini window on the right-hand side in much the same way that Copilot does on the Windows desktop. So it's on the side, and it actually, to be fair, Jim, it actually does step out of the way. Like, it's not actually in your way if you don't want it to be in your way. You just click that little icon and the whole thing disappears, which is why actually I sometimes wonder about people who freak out and they go, there's that extra icon on the top that opens up AI, and I'm really angry about that. Well, just don't use it. Just don't click the icon. It's that simple, and it won't open up. Nobody's putting a gun to your head and saying you must
That's not
open
what I
it.
was referring to. When you open up a Google Doc right now, the first thing that happens is a pile of junk at the top of it, and that just clutters up the way. Instead of using that icon, which you're absolutely right, that's a perfectly reasonable user interface, you know.
I don't see anything.
But you said it.
I'm
I'm going to pin you down on this, Marcel. You said it. What did you say? It was pretty good. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I did say that.
pretty good in this world. I'm Sam Altman. I'm going for artificial general intelligence. I'm DeepSeek. I'm going to make so you can process the entire internet for 1 cent for 1 million tokens. We're Google.
And it's pretty
We're
good.
pretty good.
Okay, all right, point taken.
Oh my God. It's like the cringe I have, and you can call me a fanboy all you want, but the cringe I have when people say Apple Intelligence. And I realized for the first time in all of my years of buying these devices, that's a contradiction in terms.
Yeah.
So the biggest players are at least lost their footing in this, which again means why do we have to understand different models? Because nobody's done an Apple or an Android so that you can really get an environment with all of these things in it and start to stake out your turf as to which one you like.
But I think part of it too is it's going to be interesting to see. You're right. They all have their own highlights and so on. But let's not forget that OpenAI has only been around for 2.5 years.
Actually, about 10 years.
ChatGPT, but yeah. But, what's not there today will most likely be there tomorrow. And ChatGPT may do it today. Claude may do it tomorrow. Grok may do it the day after. But Grok may also put something else in that neither of the other ones have. And so it's that leapfrog constantly. And I think at some point in time, it's going to level off. I think they're all going to continue to grow, but the key features and functionality are going to level off so that central set of tools and functions is going to be the same or similar with a lot of the tools. And if you want a very specific thing, yes, you need to go to Claude, or yes, you need to go to Grok. But for the average person, it probably won't make much difference which tool they use.
I think there are going to be sections, there'll be little bit of a land grab, so to speak, on some of these things. Think about telephone companies, okay? There are a small handful of telephone providers out there that provide you with cell service and so on. But the fact of the matter is, there isn't a whole hell of a lot of difference between Bell and Rogers and Primus or whatever. You pick up the phone, you call somebody or text somebody, or you do whatever else on your phone, but somewhere in the background, there's a provider giving you almost everything that almost everyone else is giving you. We've got Google and Google's Gemini suite of products. We've got OpenAI and their GPT suite of products. We have Anthropic and the Claude series of products. We have Meta and the Llama suite of products. We have XAI, and that's the Grok stuff from Elon and company over there. And there are some that we never think about, despite the fact that they are still a big deal. Or actually, I should mention Quen and DeepSeek, the big Chinese models. They are definitely big players in the game now, even if nobody really thought about them 6 months ago. They're top of the heap at the moment. There's Mistral in France, which is, a hugely capable and actually amazingly good model. Their latest version, if you want to go and play with that, you can do image and coding and writing and searching the internet real time. And it's actually an impressive product, and it's completely free and it's completely open. So you have access to a lot of these players at the moment. But because everything is converging to, I can give you almost everything that you need almost all of the time, I think it's really going to be much like a cell phone provider. You're going to sign up with a service, and yeah, maybe the other guy has this thing that you wish you had. I hate to admit it, and you'll only hear me say this once, but every once in a while, I see something on Apple that I think would be nice to have on my phone. And this is the last time you'll ever hear me say this.
Jim, I think our podcast program has hallucinations. I could have sworn I just heard Marcel say something about, oh my God.
Really good, John. Have you been working on how to automate a Marcel for this? He sounds really authentic until that part where he started talking not trash about Apple.
Marcel is actually an AI. He's not really here today.
Well, just because we did have a point to the show, and that was to try and figure out how you wade your way through at least the main models. If you're trying to wade your way through and understand what should I be doing with each one of these, why should I be even considering it? Why wouldn't I just grab one? I'm going to give my piece of advice is I would grab one and play with it if that works. Just exhaust it and see what you can get from it. But there are other pieces, and these are other things that are going to come up, I think. One is truth. This week, it was obvious that Grok had been interfered with, and it had been interfered with so that it would say nice things about Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And if you like Elon Musk and Donald Trump, forget it. Doesn't matter. It's whatever political leader. If you could, we say that DeepSeek won't answer what Tiananmen Square was, but Grok was right there. And forgive me if I don't believe the story that it was a former OpenAI employee working here who decided he really wanted to protect Elon. I'm sorry. That doesn't wash in a place that's run as tightly with Elon's personality in there. And I've seen what he's done on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. He's interfered. How do I know that? Because I don't think a programmer blocked his ex-wife or whoever the mother of his last child was. He's an operative in this. So that he didn't know about it, I think stretches credulity. But even if that's true, the fact that somebody can manipulate the facts that you get is not like the internet where you can say, you can't find that. I get that. But this is, I'm going to get this artificial intelligence to tell you things that aren't true. And
forced hallucinations.
That's scary. And I think that's going to have some sort of impact on which models get picked. We've talked about working on a Canadian model, but I think we're also going to get national models so that people feel they have greater control over the data that's
at your national, which is exactly, by the way, what's happening with DeepSeek and Quen. Because the Chinese government is into major corporations in the country, they are effectively painting their national image into the models that are being built there. And
the American government isn't?
No, I was going to, no, of course they are. Remember when I talked about Gemini, the idea that it won't actually tell you who political leaders are for fear of offending someone? I think that's a real concern, and I think that's a problem. You are going to see that sort of thing. And hallucinations, remember, hallucinations are not a bug. They're a feature of these things. Okay. They truly are.
No,
If
I
you
agree
want
with
the
you.
systems to be able to imagine different scenarios, to be able to weigh things, then it has to be able to do that. It just has to. Otherwise, it's not going to be all that useful. You might as well go back to the days of a Google search and hope that instead of giving you a whole bunch of advertisers at the top, it actually starts giving you the honest to God page ranked response that it used to give you at one point.
But when you get down to things, this is where you start to look at the models, and I think we're going to have to make some intelligence decisions. Which one's better at research? Google has stepped up to the mark and is being regarded as, for scientific research, one of the best. I think we're...
Unless you're paying the $200 a month, in which case OpenAI's deep research actually does a better job.
Okay. I'll take that as real, because I'm not paying $200 a month to find out. I will let somebody else find out. And
Yes.
because 95%, and it still goes down to the 95%, or it used to be 80-20. For me, it's now 95-5. And that is for almost everything I need to research, Perplexity is free.
Yep.
And it does a very credible job. I was doing an article on Canada and some of the things that have happened in oil and gas, and I didn't need $200 a month. I asked Perplexity. It came up with a whole report of these things, listed and had links to all of its sources, and
Yep.
it was scandalous. It must have taken a minute and a half.
That's awful.
You should have found a new tool, Jim. That's way
I
too
know.
slow.
So what?
Yeah,
Let's
I use
just
Perplexity a lot
circle
now,
this
too.
around. What's your advice to people if they're going through this? And we'll list them. Oh, there's OpenAI, and that's really Microsoft, or to some extent, Copilot, Microsoft's Copilot, or OpenAI, Google with Gemini, Claude from Anthropic, Grok from X, and DeepSeek, and those models. How should people make sense of this?
So
Please, John.
I was just going to start out with my typical security side of things. I will say that from a security standpoint, I like DeepSeek. I actually do. But I have a huge concern with it running the way it is. Marcel, we've talked about the ability to run your own version of DeepSeek, and I think that's a great solution to it. But running it in its existing location and so forth, I'll ask it, help me write a job description, but I won't ask it anything that has any kind of critical information in it. But I think the security to me is a big thing. And I know that, and even the free versions of OpenAI now give you the ability to check a box that says, don't use my material to train the model.
Yeah.
I don't know how accurate or thorough that is, whether it still puts some things
Would
out
an
and not
AI
others.
model lie to you, John?
Never. But I think that's a big piece. And as I said, from our standpoint where I work, we're looking at Copilot, not necessarily because we think it's the best tool, because although, as you said, it is essentially ChatGPT, it has its limitations where ChatGPT's gone further than Copilot has.
Yeah.
However, we can tie it into our Microsoft environment and keep it secure. And I think that for a Google shop, it makes more sense to use something like Gemini because they can easily tie it into their Google environment and so on. But I think as far as other than that, what tool to use,
Well,
I think you have to pick one you're comfortable with.
One thing I'm going to jump in with you on the security part of this, though, is that I think you've given sage advice in terms of some of the ideas that you need for corporate security. But one thing that people need to be screaming from the rooftops, do not download anything that is not mainstream, and even then be careful.
Yes.
There are so many apps out there and things that are just malware. And I don't know why Android can't keep up with them, or even Apple can't keep up with them. But the one that came up this week was this, and it's not an AI thing, but it's a TikTok substitute called Red R or something like that. It's just full of malware. And when you're downloading apps, you have to make sure you get the original one from the model. OpenAI,
Yes.
if you go through, there's 25 or 30 or 50 with their logo on it. Same thing with everything. And this stuff, I would not put this on my phone to save my life, let
Yeah.
alone onto my laptop.
And tied in with that, Marcel's talked before about some of these tools that will start to control your computer for you, that they will start to take action for you. And that's scares the hell out of me too, because what else is it doing? Because you have to give it authority to access certain things within your computer. And how do you know that it's now not got access to things like your banking information or whatever else, and just running away with whatever it wants to do off your computer? I think regardless of which tool you use, as you said, Jim, you have to be careful and know what you're getting.
There's an old term that predates all of this stuff. In fact, it predates computers, called social engineering, which is basically you're hacking other human beings. That's what the magician does on stage. They're doing something over here, but they're saying, look here instead. So you don't notice that. So these sorts of things have been around since forever, as long as humans have existed. And we have these weird ideas that people are intelligent, autonomous agents that are able to make rational decisions, but that's not true. Humans are stupid creatures and easily manipulated. And it's only when you actually step back and take the time to think about these things that you realize that there is a danger. People are always talking about, oh, I'm worried about my personal information. And then they download Red One or whatever the hell it was called and turn over all their personal information to it. Yes, I agree to absolutely everything that you tell me. I used to make jokes about that stuff all the time. Everybody's made that joke. What did the end user agreement say? It said, okay. It was like, that's what it said. It said, okay. Okay. There were like 17 freaking pages of information, and you scroll down at the bottom and you click okay. So you could use a big cat, but that's the fact is people don't.
And why did you click okay? Because it didn't have a place to go whatever.
That's good. I like that.
Guys, we've got to wrap. We have, speaking of whatever, we got to wrap for this week. This was a start. And for anybody listening to this, I hope we weren't too stumbly, but there's a lot to unpack here. And I think I want to see if we can put some more thought to this next week, because I think it is really an issue that everybody's going to be grappling with.
I'm going to throw a parting thought out there. Can I? Quick parting thought? When I was writing extensively about Linux desktops and open source stuff, one of the things that came up all the time was the idea that there's like a gazillion distributions out there. And then the question was always, which one should I use? Okay. And my answer was always, use the one your friends are using. Okay. That's the best advice, because then you have a support group, a number of people who are working with the same technology, and then you get to take advantage of that. If your entire in-house infrastructure is built around Apple, for instance, get your smart Apple devices and scatter them around the house. Why? Because they'll work better together. If you've got a GOOGLE SHA you use on a daily basis, then use that stuff. In other words, use the thing that fits your lifestyle the best, because there are so many freaking things out there. And if you can't decide on something, talk to your friend who's really into that stuff and use what they're using. Because if nothing else, if they're a half-decent friend, not so good that they'll help you bury a body, but they'll help you move. Okay, if they're a half-decent friend, they'll answer your questions for you.
He sounds like he's been disappointed by somebody in the past. We're going to leave it there. Marcel Gagné, John Penard, thank you very much. And we'll catch you next week with Project Synapse.
Live long and prosper.